the truth cannot be beaten. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the truth. So ultimately, there is a stopping point, and as history has shown us, all these things fall apart. How they're going to fall apart is anyone's guess. But I agree with you. We have to remain optimistic that the right people will show up at the right time to help fix things up again.
Hey guys, this is Rafi of the Endgame Investor, and today I have a very exciting guest for me, Chris Rossini, who is the co-host on Fridays of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. I know Chris from back in the day when the great Robert Wenzel was blogging. He's a mentor to us both, and Chris was his assistant, right? For how many years?
Yeah, I would say about 10 years. Yeah.
10 years an assistant Robert Wenzel. That's got to be, life-changing to be around a man like that. Mm-hmm. If you want to know about Bob Wenzel, I'll put my link to a eulogy that I wrote for him when he passed away in May 2021. And it was very devastating when he passed, because I was looking to him for mental calm, which he provided me for the first year or so of COVID. Of this whole craziness, but I really, I wish he was still around so I could hear what he had to say. Anyway, Chris, thank you for joining. Well, I wanted to, on these shows, I try to get into the more personal angle. So we'll start out with that. Who are you? How did you get involved in the libertarian community? When did it do you have any specific memories of or points in your life when you realize that this whole thing, and the libertarians will know what I'm talking about, whole thing, it's different for different people, this whole structure, this whole societal structure is a sham, and then you had to take a different direction. What's your story? How did you end up here?
Well, jumping ahead to the most relevant part, in my early 20s, it was during the NASDAQ bubble, and I was trading. I was able to trade for a living, which I did also for about 10 years. And when that bubble burst, at that time, I discovered Ron Paul, Mises Institute, and my entire worldview changed. It was then that I started learning about Austrian business cycle theory. I read Mises, Rothbard, anything I could get my hands on. And back then, books were physical. It's not like today where you can instantly read on Kindle. I was always libertarian minded. I started off Republican because, that's what I was surrounded by. But I always had a libertarian streak within me. And started off because it was available in the bookstores, reading Ayn Rand, and enjoyed those books, even though I'm not an atheist. As you learn more about Austrian business cycle theory, libertarianism, that I shed the Randian stuff. And but it was during that time that I really started studying, and I decided that I want to do something. I can't just know this stuff and just keep it within me. So I started just trying to talk to people, doing any type of jobs I could. Peter Schiff, I worked on his newsletter for a little bit. I worked a little bit with Jeff Tucker, just trying odd jobs, just trying to get to know people and just do anything for them. And finally, the big turning point was what I discovered Robert Wenzel, which was on LouRockwell.com. Lou would publish him often, and I would read Wenzel and be like, oh man, this is the guy. And I discovered his site, economicpolicyjournal.com, targetliberty.com. They're still available, even though he has passed, sadly. And I thought, I want to work for him. But I didn't know anybody, that could connect me with him. So I decided, what, I'm just going to go on his site and comment as intelligently as I can, and maybe he'll notice me. Evidently, that's what happened. I commented for a long time and then got to know him, emailed him, and finally asked him, can I do anything for you? And I worked for free. It wouldn't matter. And ultimately, I got to the point in the friendship to where I asked him, can I write for you? And that was a real significant moment, because at that point, people could know who Chris Rossini was, because he had a substantial audience. And yeah, so, and during that time, we interviewed Daniel McAdams, who works for Ron Paul, and I got to know Daniel. And, you know, thank God today I work for him and for Ron Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you have the same feeling. But when I think of these people, the fact that they are on the planet, and on the days when I feel completely alone and isolated among a basically insane asylum of society that is so dysfunctional that I sometimes I just I don't know what to do, then
Mm.
I just remind myself that these people still exist, and even the ones that passed, they did exist. I mean, humanity can create, humanity can develop people like this, and that gives me hope to keep going on the next day, because
Yeah,
otherwise, yeah, I would just lose it.
right, right.
um so I mean, I'll just point this out off the cuff, but your personal life story here, it seems very Robert Wenzellian itself, because as we know him, he was able to sort of manipulate his way into speaking to the Federal Reserve. I don't know how he did that or how he
Yeah,
accomplished that. I mean, these things just sort of like happen to these sorts of personalities. So I think I'll just comment on the Fed's blog or something. I don't know what
right.
he did, but it's a similar story. Like, you were just some guy commenting on a blog, and all of a sudden, like, your next step, and now you're like you're co-hosting the Ron Paul Liberty Report, which is like, I don't want to use the word holy of holies. It's not the holy. There's
Yeah,
no holy of holies of
right.
libertarianism, but it's a significant thing, and it shows what efforts can do if they're properly focused.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I didn't put in there that there was a ton of reading and studying and working hard and thinking that is involved. But you know, when you're doing whatever it is that your passion in life that comes to you, it's like a fire in you that you almost can't stop.
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, it wasn't fluke, but there was a lot of hard work involved. And still, you know, I never stop. So, but yeah, anybody who applies themselves, and if you have this desire to share knowledge that is valuable to people, you can do it with, a lot of hard work and a lot of luck. I was lucky too.
Okay, so the main question I wanted to ask you is something that I'm personally struggling with, and maybe you've spoken to Ron about this. I'd imagine he's been around since the 1930s. He would know what it's like to have to struggle with life at almost any stage through almost any adversity. But what I'm having a serious problem with is that, especially in Israel, where I'm surrounded by Jews who have a Holocaust consciousness, and theoretically should know what it means to be caught up in some kind of mass formation where ignorance and scapegoating come together in some disgusting combination, and a whole group of people is ostracized and blamed for every problem in society, and then tried to segregate out of it, and who knows what the next steps would have been. That was definitely the feeling here. And I feel personally like I was persecuted in a Holocaust type of pattern. Not that it led to the same conclusions yet, at least, but I definitely felt it going in that direction. I was seriously concerned of being carted off to a quarantine camp at some point. I didn't know when, and I was really starting to lose it, and I didn't know where to turn. Except to God and my religion. But even that was hard, because most of the pressure was coming from my co-religionists, and it's specifically the religious, the national religious types that in Israel, you might not be familiar with it, but the national religious, they see the state apparatus of Zionism, of the state of Israel itself, as like a holy entity, because now we have this thing that protects us from the non-Jews and will prevent the
Mm,
Holocaust from ever happening again, except from the apparatus itself.
mm,
That's the paradox. So what I'm saying is, my struggle now is that, now that when the masks went on, really the masks came off, because you knew who everyone was, you knew where they
right.
would go, you knew what drove them. And now it's like, oh, they're just trying to forget it ever happened, and I'm expected to reintegrate into a society where I know how everyone acted when they were under pressure, and I don't know how to, first of all, reintegrate into my family. Lots of my family were for, the green passport and segregation. I don't really know how to relate to them anymore. How is it that we can just reintegrate into the society in a way that without the extreme paranoia of, I know these people now, and I want to stay away from them because I'm scared of them. So what can we do to just go on in a world like this now that we know what it is?
Yeah, so for a little history about myself, we are Roman Catholics, and my grandmother, who lived in Poland at the time during World War II, was physically kidnapped from her family by the Nazis and forced to work for them. So I have that in my history. And that has always played a part in my mind of just how bad things can get. Obviously, she told me all the stories when the Russians invaded. She was a part of all that too. So being in Poland when she was not the best place to be, So while that was in my mind, it always occurred to me as I've been growing up, becoming an adult, that things can get messed up. Very messed up. And then once you learn economics, and what we have learned, Mises and Rothbard, once you can see all of that in play, you can see that things are going to be bad in our lives, when these types of power structures exist. Now, we have a choice of whether we obviously can't, give in, like you wouldn't give in. That's why you're asking this question. I wouldn't either. So what are we supposed to do? Well, we have to stand by, and that's what Ron Paul does. Even though his entire career has been facing resistance, from day one until the present moment, there is constant resistance. But somebody has to hold the truth out, and there are many of us, not just Ron Paul, not just myself, yourself. There are many of us, hopefully enough, to ultimately turn the tide, but we have to accept the fact that we're going to constantly face resistance. And the way I look at it is, it's not my job to turn around the entire picture, the whole world. I believe, and I'm sure you're similar, that's God's realm, but it is within my power to reach the people that I can reach. And, we face resistance every single day on the social media. People call you names. They don't like what you're saying, but you got to do it anyway. And so once you take the world off your shoulders and just focus on what you can do and what is affecting you in your house and with your family that you're in charge of, it takes the pressure off, not completely ever, but at least takes the pressure off on what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, that it reminds me of Dvar Torah, a piece of Torah that Rabbi told me, at the peak of this insanity. It was he was talking about the first verse of the Ten Commandments, and that starts, "I am the Lord your God that took you out of the land of Egypt." And what was his comment? His comment was like, what was God saying? Like, look, I'm the one who guides history here. I took you out of Egypt. That's not your job.
Mm-hmm.
You do your job. Don't worship any other gods, and like leave history up to me. So exactly what you were saying. You got to take the world off your shoulders, and I constantly cast off the yoke as much as I can, even though I feel responsible. But I know it's not really up to me.
Yeah, and if you look at the world around us, obviously Judeo-Christianity has taken a hit over these last few centuries. They worship the state. That's the big one, and because of the state, without getting into the weeds, they control the money so they can expand themselves. So of course they've gotten so large, all these power centers, that people worship them and believe everything from them, even when it's false, even when they contradict themselves, like a Fauci in the same interview. It doesn't matter. That's who they worship now, the state. And Fauci was the spokesperson for a little bit, and then it'll be someone else, whoever they're directed to. But yeah, the Ten Commandments is, you're not supposed to worship the state. And as far as our libertarian leanings and our political views, which is, to treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. I mean, if libertarian is not that, ism is not that, then, that's what we're all about, is the non-aggression principle. Do not use force to harm another person's person or property. So yeah, there's, the religious aspect is always the commanding aspect in the background.
One of the ways that I try to keep positive, and I really do believe this, is that people are looking at the next stages of this and seeing things like central bank digital currencies, a cashless society, all these really severe hits against what remains of our liberty. And what I try to focus on and tell people is that the way that Murray Rothbard described hyperinflation was never as some tragedy that struck, even though there are very tragic aspects of it, that's for sure, and I don't deny that. But he saw it as the final limit to the inflationary machine, that after that it can't pass that. Once governments lose control of monetary value and they don't have seigniorage anymore, their printing doesn't accomplish anything, then the entire apparatus of power disintegrates. So I mean, I look at a cashless society, and Israel is now restricting cash transactions. You can't do anything more than 6,000 shekels, which is like $1,700 or something like that. So all these transactions which happen in cash are now they can't, and all the VAT taxes and everything's going to be applied. It's just all this is going to speed up the price increases and the price inflation. I don't want to call it inflation, but rising consumer prices to the point of hyperinflation. This all speeds it up. And when you look at every single problem of society, whether it's the medical establishment, the educational establishment, it all comes from a river of dirty money that is coming from capitals and spewing itself into these apparatuses and causing people to try to drink from it in any way they can, and corrupting all of them. And we saw it in medicine, we see it everywhere. So when this inflationary machine shuts down once and for all, when the dollar hyperinflates, and from there every other reserve currency that's backed by the dollar, every other currency that's backed by the reserve currency, then this entire engine is going to reverse itself, and all the bullshit jobs that exist now because of this inflation and all this money, that's fake money that's pouring out everywhere, they're just gonna have to go. And the only people that will have value to their labor are the ones that can actually do things and create stuff. It's going to be an incredibly hard transition, but it's going to be glorious in its own way. I just hope that the best people can survive this. So that's the positivity that I try. It's going to be a hard fall, but it's going to be a fall onto solid ground, thank God.
Right. I think you're spot on there. As far as the predictions that, well, first we have to think about the types of people we're dealing with. These people in power today, they really think that they are all powerful. And that's why they're so comfortable making the crazy predictions that they make. They really, I'm sure, believe that they can pull it off. But, they can't. They could surely produce a lot of damage. But this is a common mentality when you look at, the people through history. The Hitlers and the Maos and the Bolsheviks, they also made these crazy projections about what they were going to accomplish, and they did not. They definitely created a lot of damage. That's the constant, the constant that seems to go with all of these episodes, and we're experiencing our own. But they will not get what they want ultimately, and we could already see with the vaccine passports, at least here in the United States. They wanted us, and they were taking the steps. So we could see with the vaccine passports that they were trying to implement that, but reality knocked it down completely. They're gone. Nobody even talks about it. It's almost an embarrassment, and it is embarrassment. Of all places on earth, here in the United States, to have to check to see if we got a certain injection, if you want to get a hot dog or go to a baseball game. That is a nightmare scenario. So that just shows that they are not all powerful. They fail. I'm sure, I don't know what the I'm sure this COVID thing did not go as planned, because it really is it's a big mess, a haphazard mess. So ultimately reality will strike them down. You talk about the financial part. I agree with that 100%. The only reason they have these crazy delusions is because they could finance whatever they want. There are no financial restrictions whatsoever. The public has no say in how they finance themselves, so they can pay whoever they need to pay to propagandize. So they probably think that they have their thumbs on humanity, and it may look like that, and it looks like that for a lot of people. But the truth cannot be beaten; otherwise, it wouldn't be the truth. So ultimately, there is a stopping point, and as history has shown us, all these things fall apart. How they're going to fall apart is anyone's guess. But I agree with you. We have to remain optimistic that the right people will show up at the right time to help fix things up again.
Because you were close with Bob, maybe you would have some kind of insight. Right before he passed away, I wrote an article that I think, well, let me put it this way. I think the term fiat currency itself is a mistake, because I don't think, when I think about it, I don't, the term is very misleading, and I don't think fiat currency, in terms of dictating value from above, is possible at all. Because the entire notion that the dollar and gold are no longer linked, I think, is false, because there is an exchange rate between the dollar and gold. It still exists. You can still hand over $1,800 or whatever it is, and go to a coin shop and get a coin, an ounce of gold. It's still possible, and in that way, we could say the dollar is still backed by gold to a certain extent. Now, if that means that fiat currency is impossible, then that takes away the entire fear notion that let's say central banks are going to institute and force us to accept central bank digital currencies, and people are scared of this and saying, oh, we're going to be slaves forever. But my response is that a central bank digital currency would just be a digital form of the current dollar that would be pyramided on top of the dollar that already exists, and eventually that pyramid will fall and break. I mean, they're not doing anything different. So I think as libertarians, we should stop talking about fiat currency, because it is impossible. The dollar is still a gold substitute. And for other countries like Israel, the shekel, which is backed by dollars, the Bank of Israel only owns dollars. So when the dollar collapses, the shekel collapses, and basically all fiat currencies collapse together. So, I say, okay, they're going to go to a cashless society anyway. They're going to go to central bank digital currencies. Let's just let's get it over with. Come on.
Right.
Just do it, and let's make the currency collapse. That should be the primary goal, which is why whenever you exchange your fiat, and I'm not saying to do this irresponsibly, do it responsibly, make sure you can pay your bills and all that. But when you buy gold and silver, when you take a physical coin and you hide it under your mattress or whatever safe place you have, that is our way of pushing the end of the fiat currency system forward, so that we can move on to the next stage of human existence, or whatever we don't call it. I don't know what's next.
Right.
But yeah, so I told this to Bob, and I showed him my article, and he said that it would take him a long time to respond to it, but I never found out what he was going to say.
Yeah, I don't know what he would have said, and but I like your idea. I mean, the dollars that we're using today didn't just pop out of a vacuum. This is a continuation from the very beginning of dollars.
But I just wanted to add, but it has to be because of the Misesian regression principle. The regression theorem says that you can't just say this is money and this is how much it works. That's just an Uber price control. It has to be related to the past, and that's why there's still a link between the dollar and gold, and that's what we have to break.
I agree. There is a link. This didn't just happen. There is a timeline to get to where we are, and gold and silver are in that timeline. This isn't just a made up, just a fiat that authority says, okay, you're going to use this. No, there is precedent upon precedent, that goes all the way back to the beginning. So I agree with you. We are still, even though they try to hide that gold is, but you can't hide the truth. You can hide it from people's minds. They obviously have succeeded to a large extent, but not enough, not everybody. Gold is trading at $1,800 an ounce. Countries are buying gold. China, Russia, they're not doing this for no reason. They understand. They understand history. They understand fiat money. Anybody who owns gold has at least some understanding of monetary history. And so, yeah, I believe that there is still a tie, even if it's just mental. There is this continuum that we're on. And for them to say, okay, we're just going to get rid of this continuum. Now you're going to use this digital nothing that doesn't exist anywhere. Not everybody is on board with that. From what I understand, there are people on the Fed that are not on board. Today, I read that Japan is not going to be doing any CBDCs. So, people can concoct whatever they want in their minds on how, most of politics is that. They just make things up in their minds and think that just because they imagined it, they can make it happen in the real world. But, they're playing with the world, the entire world here with this whole, everybody's going to be tracked and traced with our digital currency. And, like I pointed out with the vaccine passports, they are not all knowing. They can't anticipate all the things that could pop in and just destroy the entire idea.
Yeah. So one last question, and with this we'll finish it off. I just want to know, what's it like working with Ron Paul directly on a regular basis? Any pearls of wisdom that he's giving you that you can share? What's it like being with such a titan of a human being who's so inspirational?
Yeah, he is. What you see in public is how he is in private. He is the real deal. He is a gentleman, a very hard-working person. He is on top of everything. Many times he'll call me and say, "Have you heard this?" And I'm behind. I said, "No, he's on top of everything." So he's a good heart. It's once you get to know him, you can see why this was the man who made such an impact on the world. It wasn't just somebody. This is a special person from start to finish. That he is the guy that opened up millions of minds, and it's the job of the rest of us to keep funneling the right information to all those minds that are now open.
There's a saying in Judaism. I think it's in some Hasidic sect or something, but it takes only a little bit of light to expunge a lot of darkness, and it just takes one person who with the gift, who knows what he's doing, to really shine a light on the world. And we're doing it in our own ways as much as we can. But yeah, as threatening as their blanket of darkness is, it doesn't take much to get through it.
No.
You just need the right person or the right people, and it'll break.
Yeah, I agree. And what he went through, especially for those who remember the Republican debates, being booed on national television, not everybody can have the fortitude to withstand that. Most people cannot. They'll just cave and be like, I can't take this kind of pressure. But he did it. He did it in Congress, always voting for what is constitutional, 400 to 1, 400 to 1. He's the guy. This was a special thing that he did and still does, because he every day is still working at 86 years old, almost 87, to spread the ideas of liberty. And, what a hero, and what a blessing for me to actually work for him.
Thanks for watching. Thank you, Chris, for joining me on the Endgame Investor. It's been a real privilege talking to you, and I hope we can do it again sometime soon. And tell Ron I said hi.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.